We're going to start in verse 9, and we're live all over the world right now. It is Father's Day here in America, and so wherever you're at in the world, if you're a father, we're going to be talking about God's design for fatherhood today. And we're going to be studying 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 9. This is Paul the Apostle. Paul the Apostle started a church in Thessalonica. This is his first letter to the church at Thessalonica, which is why it's called 1 Thessalonians. So this is the church, this is the letter to the people in that church. For you remember, brothers, our labor and toil, circle labor and toil. We worked night and day that we might not be a burden to any of you, while we proclaimed, circle proclaimed, to you the gospel of God. If you don't know what the gospel of God is, it's the good news that Jesus saves people by his death on the cross. Verse 10, you are witnesses, and God also, how holy, circle holy, and righteous, circle righteous, and blameless, circle blameless, was our conduct toward you believers. For you know how, underline this phrase, like a father with his children, we did these things. We exhorted, circle exhorted, each one of you, and encouraged you, circle encouraged, and charged you, circle charged, to walk in a manner worthy of God, underline walk in a manner worthy of God, who calls you into his own kingdom and glory. I'm going to walk you through, we're in a series called The Fam, and I didn't plan this out, but it's almost like God's real. And during the time of the family series, we've walked through Mother's Day and Father's Day. And so today I'm going to talk about God's design for fathers. And so for those of us that have had great examples of fathers, it'll be many of the things you probably already experienced at home. For those of us that our experience of fatherhood was not that great or totally non-existent, I'm going to walk you through God's design. When we call God our Father, what does that mean? Because many of us are like, I don't even know when I talk about God as my Father, like what even is that? So I'm going to walk you through if that hasn't been a good example for you, the example that God is and the example that other men in your life should be. And if you're going to be a dad someday, maybe that's looking into the future for you, you're a young man in here, I'm going to lay a foundation for how you can be a man of God into the future as a father. So if you have your notes, pull them out. They should be inside your bulletin if you came on campus. By the way, how are my fireplace people? Let's go, my people. Hey, if you're online with us, at the top of the comments section on Facebook and on YouTube is a link. You can click on that link at the top of the comments, and my notes will come up. Number one is this: God's design for fatherhood. Fathers are to be examples. Fathers are to be examples. Now, I have 3 subpoints inside of this first point. And number one is this: how are fathers to be examples? This is going to surprise some of you, if not all of you. Fathers are to be examples, 1A, of God. There's a reason why in our culture we have daddy issues. We even have a phrase called daddy issues, and really not a mommy issue. Or when people talk about their dads, it's usually one extreme or the other. Like, my dad was a way I don't ever want to be, or my dad was awesome, and I loved my dad growing up, blah, 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 blah. There's a reason that when you speak of fatherhood, it evokes certain emotions inside of most people, whether positive or negative, in a way that kind of motherhood doesn't. Motherhood gets just a pass. Mom's the best. When we talk about dads, we kind of go, eh. I'm going to show you the reason why. I'm going to show you the reason why, the power of fatherhood. And it comes from so the heavy lifting is going to get done on the front end of this sermon right here. Here's the reason why fatherhood matters so much. God is known as a father and has designed fatherhood to emulate him. The behavior that Paul, the apostle, which I got into reading to you in 1 Thessalonians, the behavior that Paul showed to those he spent the most time with was characterized as holy, righteous, and blameless. Woo! Here we go. Let me give you a little background. Paul the apostle, 2,000 years ago, plants a church, walks into Thessalonica, people start getting saved. He starts a church in somebody's house, and the church starts to grow. So after a while, he's an itinerant apostle, which means he goes to a place, starts a church, and then raises up men to be elders there, to lead it, to preach and teach and stuff, and then he moves to a different place, which is why the majority of your New Testament has books like 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Ephesus, Galatians. Many of those were churches that Paul himself planted, okay? he's now going to be coming back to Thessalonica after he had already planted it. Men are already raised up there to lead the church. So he's reminding them of when I was with you, remember I did these things. And one of the realities that he talked about as a man that was working in the church was our work was characterized by three things. Look at it in your notes. Look at it in your Bible in 1 Thessalonians 2:10. You are witnesses in God also how holy, think about it. Holy means set apart. It means we're different than others. We're not like the men of your culture, Thessalonica. We're not like the American men. We're not like the Russian men. We're not like the Norwegian men or the African men. We're not like the Australian men or men from Hemet. We're different than other people. We're different. That's what holy means. So when we sing to God, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. When we say the word holy, it isn't some weird religious word. We're literally saying you are other than us. You are different than us. God is the ultimate holy. He's the ultimate other. He's not like his creation. He's not like humans. He's not like rodents. He's not like the earth or the universe or whatever. God is a separate being from us. He builds the universe. He isn't part of it in his being. So understand this, ready? When Paul says, you can characterize my work as a man in the church as being holy, which means as a man of God, I'm just different than other dudes. You can look at me and go, that's a man of God. When I look at Paul, I go, that's a man of God. That's what holy means. And look at the second word, righteous. Righteous just means you do the right thing. The simplest when we talk about God being righteous, he always does the right thing. It might not be things that we like, but he always does the right thing. So when we talk about men, we say, are you a man that always does the right thing? Are you a man that when people go, man, at work, he just always does the right thing? Like, he works hard all the time, and like when there's a decision that has to be made, man, I mean, like, he always does the right thing. And then blameless, which means you're the same person all the time. Blameless means you have integrity. You're a man of integrity. Let me help you with integrity. We get the word integrity from the word integer, which is whole number. It means non-fractional. It means you're not one thing on Friday night at the Stampede. And you're a married man getting hammered on Jägermeister and dancing with some chick. That's not your wife. And then you show up to church here going, everything's legit. So it means non-fractional. I'm the same person I am at 2 a.m. on Saturday morning or on Friday night or on Tuesday afternoon. It just means you're the same person all the time. My striving in my life is to be the same person on stage as you see everywhere else. My son sees me all the time. And I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want him hearing from dad one thing from the stage and being a hypocrite at home, because that'll destroy his walk with God. Why? Because we are examples of God in our home. And one of the aspects of masculinity that's so difficult for men is women and girls and your sons, they expect men to have integrity. They expect men to do what they're going to say and then go do that thing. And then be a man that can be counted on. It's like we kind of expect that from women, but man, we expect that from every man. And when it's not that way, that's what our society always pokes at. Oh, you're a hypocrite. You're blah, 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 blah. So our society makes fun of men. The butt of every joke. In every sitcom, the dad's always the hypocrite or the loser, or he's lazy or whatever. I'm going to fix that today. I'm going to pour into your soul, men, God's design for you as a man. So while our culture mocks it because of the failures of some men, I'm going to build into you how to be a godly man. And the trinity of masculinity, I made that up in the first service, and I was hoping I wasn't going to forget it, is this. Here's our goal. Here's our goal, dudes. Ready? Here we go. You're never going to be perfect, but we can strive after this, to be holy, to be righteous, to be blameless. I always want to do the right thing every time there's an opportunity. I'm not somebody different online. I'm not posting weird photos that no one's going to see. I don't jump into weird chat rooms with some girl on the other side of the world when I'm a married man, or get into a dating app or whatever when I'm a married guy, or post these pictures that are inappropriate or whatever. Like, if somebody were to go through all of my computer and everything I've ever done and every text I've ever sent and every weird thing that could be hidden, they just go, dude, Pastor Jim's legit. Like, I can't find anything whack. He's just not whack. That's my goal. Don't be whack. Am I perfect? No. But my goal shouldn't be, I'm a loser, so I'm just going to do losery things. My goal should be, let's run after Jesus as a man. Holy, blameless, and having integrity. Always doing righteous things. I'm not ever different on my computer or my phone than I am on this stage. That's the goal. And that has to be the goal for every man. You are the example of God in your home. Here's our first principle. This meant that he not only talked the truth, but walked the truth with integrity. Here's our first principle. People often relate to the Father they can't see by the Father they can see. Woo! There we go, man. Look at it with your eyes. That's our goal. People often relate to many of us struggle to know God because we struggle to know our own dad. Because God's known as a father. He's not known as a mother. He's not known as a non-being. He is known by role as a father. So what does that mean? That means that there's literally a role for fathers that God is to us. And many times we relate to God our Father as we relate to our own dads. Is my dad consistent? Is he there for me? Is he always drinking? Is he always gambling? Is he always flirting with other women that isn't his wife? Do I see him acting like a man of God? Because when I see hypocrisy, then I go, I don't really know what God's like. When I see consistency, even if it's imperfect, I go, that must be what a man of God is and does. And now it's easier for me to relate to God because I can see the Father I can't see is made known to me by the Father I can see. Because fathers have a different authority base than moms. Masculinity has a different authority base than femininity. They're designed to work together, which is what we've gone over in this series, but there's something different about fathers. You carry different weight, and that's the weight that God has given you to carry. For those that didn't have great examples of fatherhood, you and I are to look to godly mentors to see God's idea of masculinity. So some of us didn't have that. Young ladies didn't have that. Many of us, fatherhood wasn't a great experience for us. Okay, but here's the thing. You don't just give up on fatherhood then. You say, then where are the good examples of fatherhood? Pastors, coaches, a teacher. There are people you can look around and go, okay, that's a man of God. There might not be many of them, but you can find them. Look at this. Look at 1 Corinthians 11:1. For those of us that didn't have great examples of fatherhood, look to godly mentors to see God's idea of masculinity. And here's our principle. Your heroes become your habit. Who you respect is who you emulate. If they are godly, chances are you'll want to do godly things. If they're ungodly, chances are you'll struggle in wanting to do ungodly things. Look at 1 Corinthians 11:1. This is a crazy verse. Paul the apostle, speaking to the church at Corinth, which he also planted like he did Thessalonica, look what he says. Be imitators of who? Be imitators of me. He doesn't say imitate Christ. You know what he says? He says, hey, you want to know what Jesus looks like? Eyes here. What? Hang on. Time out. What? Oh, you want to know what Jesus looks like in the flesh? Watch my life, son. Be imitators of me as I am of Christ. So Paul, as the father, so to speak, of this church in Corinth and of Thessalonica, he says, you want to know what Jesus looks like? Look at me. You want to know what God looks like in the flesh? Look at me. So as I follow Jesus, follow me, and eventually, when I die, you'll be following Jesus. Because men set the example. You are the example of God in your home, in this church. You are the example that people go, I can rely on him. He never fails me. You're just like God. And now I can relate to my God because I see my dad. Your heroes become your habits. And for many of us that were young men and young women, man, our dad was our hero. For good or for bad. And many of the habits we've learned have come from emulating dad. The way he talks, the way he walks, the beer he drinks, the porn he watches. 15 freeway flip-offs. We learn those things from our dad. How he handles stress with grace or with anger. We can never be perfect like God, but guess what? We can always get better. And that's my goal for all of us as men. Number two, inside of fathers are examples. Number one is of God, and number two, of encouragement. Paul's desire was to encourage godly behavior. Encouragement is often more fulfilling than money. You ever been at a job you hated? Even though you got paid a lot of money, like literally every day, like even maybe tomorrow morning, you're like, Jesus, help. I get paid a boatload of money and I literally hate going to work. But you know what? There's some jobs you go to that you don't make a lot of money, but you love going there because you love the people that are there. You love the encouragement you get while you're there. You feel your emotional cup get full when you're working at that job because your supervisor goes, man, I appreciate you. Man, I love the way you work. Man, you're the best worker on this team. I just want to say, I see you. And I appreciate your work. Many times, encouragement is more fulfilling than just somebody giving you money. It's nice to get paid too, but man, when you get paid and hate where you work, it's almost like not even worth it. People leave good paying jobs because they hate working there. The point is this, ready? Encouragement should come from dad. Many of us grew up in hard homes where dad was always like hard on us and it was overly rough. You're always a failure. You're a piece of trash. You never do blah, blah, blah. Listen, your foundation as a dad should be encouragement, which is you see your kids or your wife do something good and you love on them. You go, hey man, I just appreciate how you did that. Appreciate how you didn't kick the cat when the cat deserved it. Appreciate you took the trash out. Appreciate how you talked to your mom, sweetie. I know you're really mad at mom, and I appreciate the way you handle that situation, daughter. Listen, when you have a foundation, I talked about this in parenting last week, when you have a foundation of encouragement, when you have to have hard conversations, then the heart is more apt to accept it because the son or daughter knows that you love them because it comes from a heart of like, wow, I love you. And these are all the ways I've shown you I loved you because I notice everything that you do. So all of us as dads that grew up in like kind of rough homes, tough homes, we've kind of emulated that maybe in our own home. You can flip that over and just see what happens that's good and then say what's good. Because then when you have to have those hard conversations of discipline, then oftentimes the heart's more open to those things. Because Paul says this to Thessalonica, hey, I encourage you guys. He didn't just come in there. He's an apostle. He'd come in there just ripping them. Bunch of losers up in here. Y'all can't even follow Jesus. Nope, he's like, man, like a father with his children, man, I encouraged you. I brought you up. Hey, you're doing better. Hey, awesome. Good job. Be that kind of dad. Being encouraging isn't soft. It's just recognizing what's good and calling it good. And then when things are wrong, call that out too. But you've set a foundation of godly encouragement in your home. And that's something that was tough for me. Because I came from a home like that. Loving, but very much like, hey, get your act together. So I had to develop that. And you can develop it too if that's you. The art of fathering is giving accountability from a heart of love and encouragement. Even discipline should be with compassion, designed to train kids, not destroy them. So fathers, I'm saying be strong. I'm saying many of us dads in here, we are the disciplinarians of our home. We are the ones that have to make the hard call. We're the ones that have to do the spankings. We're the ones that have to go, nope, that's not going to happen in my home. So I'm for that. But also, discipline shouldn't come from harshness or anger. It should come from disciplining rebellion, not just because you're mad. Acceptable behavior, here's the appropriate discipline. So, ready? Dads, your baseline should always be from encouragement, and then when you have to make those tough calls, you can. Because you oftentimes are the foundation of that home. And so the hard calls you have to make sometimes should come from a basis of, I want the best for you, son or daughter. And here's our principle. Fathers are encouraged to have a heart of encouragement. Hey, fathers, let me encourage you to be encouraging. You'll be amazed how it's going to be awkward for some of you. The minute you see your kid do something good, That was almost okay. No, tell him, sweetie, you did awesome. I see how you did in school, or I saw you did in the soccer. Son, I just appreciate you, son. You're working really hard at this thing, blah, blah, blah. You shot that alien online. Congratulations. You sniped that dude from like 1,000 yards. That was sweet. Totally valueless, but you did a great job. Number 3, fathers are to be examples of God. You are the example of God in your home. People will relate to God often as they relate to their dad. So think about the gravity of what I'm saying. Number 2, of encouragement. Dads, be the main encourager in your home first. Discipline second, encourage first. Number 3, of hard work. God is known as a worker. God builds things. He doesn't have to work in a shop like you and I do or in the garage. He speaks and things happen. Genesis chapter 1. But God as the father, as a masculine, God isn't a dude floating around in the sky. Let me help you with that. Like the Mormon theology. He's not some man that happened to be God. So that's error. That's theological error. That's heresy. But God is known by role as a father. So he isn't some big guy in the sky, invisible dude floating around. But God is a being that represents himself by role as a father in our life. That's what we're talking about today. And one of the things he does is God builds stuff. God does things. God works in the world. God builds the world and works in the world. What does that mean? Here it is. God designed men to work and find satisfaction in providing for themselves, their family, and others. Men spend the best years of their life serving their families, their churches, and their countries by working hard, long hours. So hey, I want to pour some love into you men. Ready? I love you, and I appreciate you, because the majority of the men at this church work really long, hard hours, making their families work, making this church work, making this community work, making our nation work. And many times, without you guys, without the men that tow the majority of the financial burden, none of these things would happen. And I just want to say how much I appreciate and love you. And God, who is known as a worker, is exemplified in you when you do the best you can with the abilities God has given you, whether that's mental or physical. Many of you are going to get on the freeway at dark 30 tomorrow morning, and you're going to go down to San Diego. And then you're going to come home on the 15 or Ortega or wherever, however you come home. And you know what? You're going to go, dude, that was a long day. And I just want to pour love into your life if you're a hardworking man doing the best you can with what God's given you. Don't give it up for that. Here it is. Paul described his time at the church in Thessalonica with 2 Greek words. One is translated as labor, and the other is toil. Look at it. 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 9, the very first verse. Brothers, our labor and toil. The first word, kapos, means weariness from intense work. It's like when you exhaust yourself physically. And the next Greek word means pain from hardship. It's like when you got up this morning after you did something hard yesterday. Like you're rising from the crypt, and your body goes, and all your bones are creaking, and your muscles are sore. You like blew a hammy walking across the living room. That's what that word means. It means, man, we worked hard. He says literally day and night we worked hard. We worked so hard that we were like literally sore the next day. And this is an apostle. This is a dude that writes scripture. So here's my encouragement to you. Your wife should not outwork you. No one in your life should outwork you. If you're physically and mentally able to do work, you should be doing the most with what God gave you, not the least. Because God has built you to do great things for God. And when you're just sitting there watching TV or staring at your phone the whole day, when you could be doing something else constructive, either making money or helping somebody else out or whatever it is, to do some other work for someone else, then you're not maximizing what God gave you in masculinity. You're built bigger, faster, stronger. So if you still have those capacities, then go do something great. Don't do the least, do the most. This church is founded on amazing men and women, but especially the men of God in this place. There's no place like this place. I've never seen a church packed with so many amazing men. It's unbelievable. Literally, women, I've been standing at the door greeting people, and women will walk by. This is literally the words they say. There's so many men here. Now, they're probably single looking for a date. But the point is, that's not true of every church. And I will say this, thank you, men, because what we sit in and the good things we enjoy, much of it was from your giving to God and your labor to make this place happen. And I just want to say, hey, that's just the truth. And I thank you for that. And if you're a man who has not given back to God financially, or a man who has not helped out serving or whatever, this is a church that wants you. We love you. So come do life with us, because you're the foundation of your home. You're the God to your home, and we'll help you be godly if that's not part of how you've been so far. So we got you. We'll walk alongside you, but you got to be here. Get your family to church. Thank you for being here today on Father's Day. This is the least attended Sunday in America, but it's not for our church. We're packed. We're outside. We're everywhere. No, I'm being serious. This is the least attended Sunday of the whole year. You want to know why? Because on Mother's Day, mothers get taken out to dinner, and on Father's Day, they got to go barbecue for themselves. And so, I don't get how that works. But like men, I'd rather stay home. I'd rather, barbecue or clean the backyard or pick up dog poop than go to church. It's like the one Sunday my wife doesn't nag me to go to church or whatever. Listen to me. You're the leader, so be a leader, son. Get your family to church. And I thank you for the dads that are doing that, because it's literally making an eternal difference. Because when your sons and your daughters see you sitting at church, it'll change their life. Walk worthy so those who follow know where to go. Look at this. Look at the end of verse 12. Walk in a manner worthy of God. Let me help you. I'm going to be really honest with you for no other reason than I want you to understand me. I grew up in a home that had a dad in northern Minnesota that literally got up every day, worked 2 jobs. He was a contractor, and he was also a teacher, biology and a physical science teacher. So on the times when he didn't get paid very much, man, he'd go do contracting work. It was literally 40 below some of those mornings where you had to plug your car into the house so it wouldn't freeze up when you got in it in the morning. And he would put on this 13 layers of clothes and go work outside when literally people are dying because it's so cold. And man, my dad would go crank it out. And then that's why I moved to California. I don't have to do those things because I'm smart. But you know what I learned? I'm like, dude, Dad, what are you doing? And you know what? Everything that's good in my life came from looking at my dad. He worked hard. He cranked it out. He never let us not eat in situations that were very extremely difficult. This is through the late 70s and the 80s when, the economy took a digger, and it was like, man, I got to work 2, 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. But I watched my dad do all that. He didn't sit around and drink all day going, oh, woe is me. He goes, man, I got to make it happen. Somebody's got to keep these lights on. And you know what? That poured into my life. And, Paul here, somebody's bored already. You know what, Paul here, he goes, I'm an apostle. I work tirelessly day and night. And you saw it with your own eyes. And you know what that means? That means pastors, you know how I take that? That means pastors should be the greatest example of hard work and godliness. And I take that personally in my own self. So let me help you. Tomorrow, I will be in the office, just like many of you get up going to work. Many of you guys think pastors, they only work 2 hours a week. It's amazing. They just walk up on stage, blab about some stuff, and then it's golf the rest of the week. Sweet. I wish I could be a pastor. Let me tell you something. There were moments that I would told God, I go, God, I have gifts that I wish I could just run a small business, make millions of dollars, and just be an attender at a church and just finance the church. Let me be the financer guy. I don't want to lead it because that's too much pressure. but God called me to this role. And I'm like, okay. Tomorrow I'll be back in the office in the morning. And I just want you to know the pastors of this church and the directors of this church, many of them 50, 60, 70 hours a week pouring into discipling and making this church great for God. The reason you're seeing the blessing of God is because we have no lazy people on our staff. They are some of the most hardworking, especially the men of this church. They bust it all the time. They literally help put up some of these things physically as this church was coming together. I want you to know that you have a staff on this church that relentlessly serves you and loves you in the background. You're just seeing the 10% of what gets done. The 90% gets done throughout the week, which will start tomorrow morning for next week. That's what Paul talks about when he goes, hey, I just want you to know, because many of us, before I became a pastor, I had no idea what you did. You play golf or just hang out or just look at videos all day? What do you do? Understand, ready? When you do things, great things for God, it takes a lot of hard work. And God is blessing this church because of many of the hard work of many of the staff people here. I want you to understand, when we talk about walking worthy, these are my shoes. I go all over town in these Adidas because Nike is lame and Adidas rules. And so I go all over town. I play basketball in these shoes. I've gone to the mall in these shoes. I pumped gas in these shoes. I do life in these shoes. When I had a son, we bought him some shoes. When we had Caleb, we bought him shoes so he kind of looked like Dad. And he literally physically looks like Dad. And we actually dressed him up to look a little bit like Dad. And one of the things we did is we bought him shoes that kind of looked like Dad's. And Paul uses this phrase of walk worthy of the calling of God. And it's this masculine phrase that means whoever you follow is who you become. And so when he talks about walking worthy, it's like the children in your house, dads, walk like you. Many of them look like you through genetics. Some of them dress like you. But in all respects, everybody follows dad. And if you don't have a dad in your life, kids struggle to find who that dad is. But when you find a godly role model, a pastor, teacher, coach, whatever, you go, oh, I patterned my life after this person. And Paul's example is this. Hey, when you do great things for God, oftentimes your kids will follow you. Even if they go off course for a little while, you'd be amazed how when you're gone, sometimes they come back to God because of the example that you set. So fatherhood is more than just showing up and paying the bills. Fatherhood is setting the example so that those who come after you will be like you. You'll never be perfect, but you can strive to be godly. So that when others walk behind you, they go, your daughters go, that's the kind of husband I want and the kind of dad I want for my kids. When your sons come behind you, they go, I want to act like dad does. I want to talk like dad does. That's the power of masculinity. It's the power of godly fatherhood. Is walk worthy so that those who come behind you see Jesus. And wear Adidas. I close with this, ready? Fathers are to be honored. Number one, fathers are to be examples of God, of encouragement, and of hard work. And lastly, the major number two, fathers are to be honored. And that's what we're doing today. Though not perfect, God expects people to respect and honor fathers and those who play a fatherly role in their life. Honoring doesn't mean approving of everything that they've done, but it does mean respect is given to the position God has given fathers and elders and pastors. So, honoring doesn't mean you approve of everything that's happened in the past. Honoring just means I'm thankful for the position God gave you in my life, and I thank you for those things. So let me help you. Many of you haven't talked to dad in decades or years because of something that happened, okay? My encouragement to you is when you text them today and go, hey, I just want to say Happy Father's Day, say something that you appreciate. I appreciated you for how you helped, you kept the lights on and you were a hard worker. Doesn't mean you're approving of everything in the past. What it means is I'm appreciative of what I can appreciate about our relationship. That's what honoring is. Honoring is saying, I'm appreciative for the position, not appreciative for everything that's happened, but that's what it means to honor fathers and pastors and people that are the examples of godliness in your life. And here's our principle. God honors those who honor those that God wants honored. God honors those who honor those that God wants honored. So when you honor those that God has put in your life, it's amazing how you feel at peace with God. You feel at peace with what you're supposed to do as a person who honors those that God wants honored. It doesn't mean they're perfect. Doesn't mean you agree with everything. It just means I appreciate you and these things that you've done for my life. Paul's goal wasn't just to work hard and share only of his goods. He was a very generous person, gave of his finances, even as an apostle, but also share about his God. So he didn't just share about his goods, he shared about his God. As Paul proclaimed the good news of Jesus to others, so fathers should speak it to themselves, their family, and others. It's an honor to honor God. And here's our last principle. Fathers, look at me, and I'm done. And then you can go belly up to the bar and have a root beer. Ready? Look at me. I want to honor you because I love you. You're the foundation of your home. Even if you're a young man, you're like, I'm not even married. This doesn't really apply to me. You might be someday. So let me speak into the future for you so you know what a man of God looks like. Ready? Here's our last principle. A father's greatest legacy is his spiritual legacy. It's great to give your kids a boatload of money, but they're just going to spend it when you're dead and crash the Ferrari. It's cool to give them a home that you've got paid off. Good. Be financially responsible. Good. Awesome. Good for you. But the greatest thing that goes beyond the money they'll spend, that you give them from an inheritance, is that you love Jesus. And that they saw you at church. They saw you serving. His 3 daughters get to see dad serving God every week. So understand, ready? They need to see you do something other than make money and watch sports. They need to see you giving to God. One of the things I remember from my dad, busted his butt all week long. We were in a church of 80 people in Walker, Minnesota. Shout out to the tundra of Minnesota right now if you're watching me. Move to California, it's better here. Ready? One of the things that I realized is my dad would put money in the plate when it came around. And I knew what it took for him to get that money in his pocket. And I remember sometimes thinking, dude, you give more money to that plate than you give to your own son. But you know what? It made me realize my dad honored God. And that changed the way I viewed God. Because it was much like Pastor Bill got on talking about, like, men set the example. And now it changed the way I manage my home and manage my finances. God deserves finances from me because he gave it all to me. He's my dad. He's my father. He helps me manage my life. So understand, ready? You set the example. And I want to honor that. The greatest legacy you can leave your kids or your wife when you're gone is your spiritual legacy you left. If that hasn't been part of your life yet, you can start today. Literally get to church every Sunday. You're local. If you can physically be here, be here. Don't ever flake. And I'm looking at some of you online right now. A father's greatest legacy is his spiritual legacy. So, hey, dads, fathers, I love you. Let's keep working on being more like Jesus so people can see Jesus in us.